Still the Place with Laura Layton,
Courtney Thorne-Smith,
and Daphne Zuniga, an iHeartRadio podcast.
Guys, this is the first time we've done like not sitting in the same room and we have to wave from a distance through our little blue screens.
I know. I got spoiled seeing you guys, but this is going to be very exciting, isn't it?
Adventurous.
We'll be in person again.
Yeah.
We will when we have a guest.
Hey, I have to ask, are you guys having a lot of spiders at your house right now?
So many spiders.
I have so much everything.
Okay, so it's not just my house.
No, there was an article recently. It's an extra crazy spider year this year for LA. Yeah, maybe all the rain.
I save them all. I put them all in a glass with a little envelope, and sometimes I have to do 2 or 3 at a time and like put it outside.
Oh, I was going to say save them.
That is
Save their lives. I don't just
giant spiders.
I don't save them like for a project later or anything. Show David at the end of the day.
Envelope. Did you say an envelope? You put them in an envelope?
No, I said I put a glass over it and I slide an envelope or piece of paper under and I take them out. But there's so many that I have to do 2 or 3 at a time.
There are so many.
Yeah, I'm having the kind where like if I'm the first person out the door in the morning, like I really have to check the door frame so that there's not one dangling right in front of my face, like mouth level, that I'm going to walk right into it. Right.
Yeah. And they're cobwebs.
I'm looking like
Georgie just came in. She wants to say hi. This is Georgie.
Hi,
So if you hear
Georgie.
snoring, that's what it is. But I took him out the other day and they walked through a web and she had a huge spider on her head.
Oh my God.
yeah, I'm not a fan. But I'm glad it's not just my house because I was literally like this morning, like, like clearing the doorways before.
Yeah.
Spiders are everywhere. I'm glad it's not. Just,
No,
all right.
It's not just you. I'll find the article and send it to you guys.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I hope the season passes soon because it's a little disconcerting to walk right into them.
It's fun to escape it all though.
My yard.
It's fun to escape it with our Melrose Place, with our gig.
So I gotta say, so this is my second time watching this episode because as you guys know, I watched the wrong episode last week because they switch it on whatever I'm watching it on. They switched these 2 episodes. It was even better the second time. I watched it again today just to refresh.
This is a really solid episode. I totally agree. All the stories were like intriguing and juicy and the relationships were really full. And I don't know, I really thought it was a solid for everybody. For all the characters, real even.
Yeah, it feels like it's gelling and we're getting very close to when you guys come on.
Very
getting
close.
there.
We're like
I'm enjoying it.
Halfway to Daphne.
Halfway to Daphne. The things get effed up.
Yeah. But we're still in this phase where the episodes are very self-contained. The storylines are self-contained and sort of wrapped up near the, at the end.
Yeah.
The storylines come to a little neat conclusion, which is an indication of the early tone of the show.
For sure.
Yes.
So we're on Melrose Place, episode number 7.
6, if you're on Amazon, you're very confused. You're my
right.
friend.
Yeah,
just go with it.
me.
Just to confuse everybody.
Yeah.
The title, however, is called My Way. And this episode opens on a wide open mouth screaming, a horror movie scream. And we pull out to find that we are inside of Sandy's mouth as she's screaming.
Lovely teeth.
I mean,
and lipstick.
Full commitment. And she is in the middle of an audition for clearly some sort of horror movie where she's required to scream. And there's a bunch of people in the room, the casting people and the producers. And it's super awkward for Sandy.
Right. And didn't that bring you back to that when they're just so disinterested? Like they really played it disinterested. It was heartbreaking.
It was so painful. And like, just like, that's how auditions can be, right? I mean,
absolutely.
And then she goes, "Can I do the next scene?" And they're like, "Oh, we cut that scene."
Yeah. No.
Like, oh, I thought I had a meaty part. No, we cut that.
What they really just wanted is to see how good her scream was. And we're going to find out that pretty much they just wanted her to scream well and to look good.
Because she's a beautiful blonde.
Yeah. So anyway, auditions are humiliating. Have you guys ever done a horror movie?
Oh, yeah. I started with a horror movie and I have a little bit of a story if you give me a second. So my first horror film was for Paramount and they flew me to Texas where we shot it. It was called The Initiation. And it took place in, of course, a sorority horror film. And I remember doing the scene. So I was the lead of it. And when there was a shower scene, this like communal shower scene, I put on a tube top. I put on like masking tape. I wrapped a towel around it. And I pretty much think safety pinned it and clamped it. I was just like, this is me in the shower, post shower. And there were the extras. And then there was this discussion about this extra being topless in the back. And I went around and I was telling all the girls, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. You do not have to do this, like trying to talk her out of doing this topless shower scene. I wanted to save her dignity. I mean, if Sandy were there, I would have been there going, nope, you don't have to do this. It's my first movie. I didn't know if she had to do it or not, but it just felt creepy. So she ended up doing it, I think. And I was like, oh God, poor thing. And then, but I was very protective in those early days. So anyway, that was one of my first experience, was that horror film.
Off of Sandy's scream, we cut to Billy and Alison in the apartment, and Billy is bummed out because he tells Alison the paper has gone out of business. He's now out of a job. He assumes perhaps lack of advertising. And he says, why does the apartment look different? Alison reveals that she's been cleaning the apartment, at which time Billy panics and he thinks, wait, I had something important. Did you throw away a little napkin? And she's like, well, yeah, I was cleaning. It looked like junk. And he was writing the idea for a short story down this cocktail napkin that has now been cleaned and thrown away. So
yes. And Alison does that terrible thing where, I remember reading recently, be careful of people who blame you for a problem they created. Like I threw it away and I'm like, well, you shouldn't have written it so messily. How rude.
Yeah.
Rude. Like, Alison, just
like
say you're sorry. Just say you're sorry.
Yeah. Well, he's upset and she's off to work. And so as she leaves, the phone rings and it goes to the answering machine. And it is Billy's mother. And she's leaving a message saying, we're expecting you and Alison in Palm Springs. Don't forget, it's your father's birthday. We're expecting you and Alison to be there. So from there, we go to Michael and Jane's apartment. And we do sort of bring this storyline back where they're starting to prepare for the baby since Jane is pregnant. And Michael is trying to move furniture, trying to measure and find out where the best place for the crib might be. And
being very sweet. Like I have to say, right? Like he's been sort of dismissive, but suddenly now that she's pregnant, he's being very sweet and wanting to take very good care of her, which I really like to see.
So excited and gung-ho.
Yeah, so sweet.
So happy.
Enthusiastic to figure out
a little overly so.
Yes.
I mean, she's not even showing. She just found out she's pregnant and he's moving furniture to fit the crib in.
I know, it's really cute though.
And she's like, I'm not that, I can move something. I can help. But he goes to try to move the dresser and hurts himself. I gotta ask, he's moving the dresser with his hands on the dresser and with his upper body, and yet he hurts his ankle. And I had to rewind it and go back because he hurts his ankle so badly that he flings himself on the bed. And she's like, oh no, are you okay? We must go to the hospital. I thought, well, that serious injury. They're off to the hospital for this. And I had to rewind it and go, he didn't even touch his ankle.
He must have misstepped off camera, right? Like rolled his ankle.
Maybe the take where he hurt his ankle maybe wasn't the take that they used. Maybe, yeah. So, but I thought that was pretty funny. He was very hurt and she was very concerned. So off they go to the hospital to handle this injury. And then we cut back to D&D and Billy is showing up at Alison's work to bring her flowers to apologize.
I have to say, I was pretty impressed with Alison on those phones. Like that's some good. I'm not a great prop actress, so I was pretty impressed with working those phones.
But see, apparently you are, because I was impressed with the same thing. You were answering the phone.
You
talking
had to do
to
that
him
for years. You had that. Did you get better at it? Was it awkward for you?
I don't even remember it. So I was like, oh, look at me prop act. I was really impressed.
Oh yeah, you're like, I'm not as bad as I thought.
Because the hard thing is, and people might not realize, like nobody's actually talking on the other end of the phone. And you as the actress need to like fake this phone call, like somebody's saying something to you in your ear, which they're not. And then also the person across the desk, which is Billy, he's talking to you and he's presenting flowers. There's a lot going on and you were juggling.
And pushing the right buttons, all those faking that whole thing. Yeah.
Yes, which is why I like to not have any props and just talk to people while I'm sitting down down.
Yeah.
And in this, I had a lot going on.
It was a lot. And you
sold it,
You were
girl.
great.
Thank you.
We all noticed the very same thing. And this is when
You sold it better than Michael sold breaking his ankle.
Well, it's all these things are hard. It's really hard. It's hard to fake an injury too.
It is true. It's so true.
Those are tough things. Screaming is hard. And so so Billy's apologizing and he brings her, he says, I knew roses were your favorite. However, he's brought carnations. And but that's where he pops the question of, hey, you want to go to Palm Springs with me for the weekend?
And he does say they asked me to bring a friend and you're my friend. But even so, like going away for a weekend, that's a big step.
Yeah, I love how you guys are again, since I wasn't there, but I love seeing how this whole progression of you guys are still friends. You're still in just the friends stage. And so he's saying, I told him, you're a friend, and you're like, okay, I'll go as a friend. And, this is like, you can see it all developing and what's going on here, which is cool. It's kind of it's a very cool sort of setup for drama.
Yeah, it's very sweet. Like I can see the chemistry already. It's very sweet.
Yeah, you can see where it's headed. And it's, obviously Billy's said something to his parents to have them say, oh, bring Alison and stuff.
Yes.
So it's all very cute. And we all are here for it. We want to see it happen. So from there, we go to Shooters where Sandy is serving beers and Jake wants to hear about the audition. And she's like not optimistic about it at all. Rhonda comes in and Sandy wants to know if anybody has called, if she got any messages, because she's waiting to hear about the audition. And Rhonda sort of teases her at first and says, no, nobody called. And then she's like, nope, except for the one message that says, you got the part. And they're all very excited for her.
And don't you feel like Jake is really turning it on? Like that feels like really intense flirting between the two of them to me.
I thought there was a lot of juice between them in this episode all the way through, which I liked. I liked their, we'll see as we go on.
This is the relationship that maybe they're, headed towards. So,
yeah. I mean, I was wondering if it was Grant and Amy making that choice or if it was in the script. Like, did they choose to play this thing?
So Shooters, Jake and Sandy were noticing there's all of a sudden a little flirty vibe with them. Maybe that's, a sign of things to come. But we find out that Sandy's just gotten this job.
And that was a sweet moment.
Yeah, because Rhonda heard it on the voice message.
Remember answering machines?
Answering machines.
Remember answering machines?
Yes. Like you couldn't wait to get home to check the answering machine,
Yeah.
Important news would be left on your tape. Yeah. Yeah.
And you'd have to go home and wait to see. I remember that so clearly.
Yeah.
Or like if you miss the call, like it has to be, that's the only way to know that you missed the call is somebody has to choose to leave the message.
Yes.
And so nice that she heard it that way, that they left a message on her machine for it.
I felt too seen, dragged.
I'm NK, and this is Basket Case.
So I basically had what back in the day they would call a nervous breakdown.
I was crying and I was inconsolable.
It was just very big, sudden swaps of different meds.
What is wrong with me?
Oh, look at you giving me therapy, girl.
Finally, a show for the mentally ill girlies. On Basket Case, I talk to people about what happens when what we call mental health is shaped by the conditions of the world we live in. Because if you haven't noticed, we are experiencing some kind of up conditions that are pretty hard to live with. But if you struggle to cope, the society that created the conditions in the first place will tell you there's something wrong with you, and it will call you a basket case. Listen to Basket Case every Tuesday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Then from there, Billy and Alison are driving to Palm Springs. And Billy informs her upon arriving that, oh, by the way, it's just going to be the two of us. I know it's my dad's birthday weekend, and I told you it was a thing, but it's just going to be the two of us. And Alison is pissed. And she says she wouldn't have
pissed, however. I remember that outfit and I really liked it. It had on the white shorts and that blue and white top, which I remember. And the boots, did you notice like those kind of little work boots I had on with the shorts?
And that the white
remember that outfit
had that detail. Don't you remember how big those were? That like little flower kind of sewn in detail.
The applique thing.
I didn't see
applique?
that.
Yeah.
Oh, those were so big. I loved those.
I remember the boots. I remember just loving that outfit.
Well, you looked adorable.
Do you remember where you shot it? Did you guys go out to Palm Springs? Probably not. Somewhere in Santa Clarita?
like an apartment building in probably Santa Clarita. I was going to say the Valley, but maybe Santa Clarita. Yeah, just an apartment building.
Yeah.
Because it looked like a little like cul-de-sac, like complex, right? Right. You pulled
a
into
little
a
condo
cul-de-sac.
complex.
Yeah. Yeah. So it could have been lots of places.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't actually.
There's a lot
as
of
far
those
as
here
Palm
in Southern
Springs.
California, like all over.
So
outside
many.
the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Allison's upset because she doesn't want to send the wrong message. Like, hey, wait, you told me I was just coming as your friend and I wouldn't have come if it was just us. This is kind of awkward. And then sure enough, when Billy's parents come to the door, it's clear that, oh, by the way, I also told my parents that you're my girlfriend. And the door open.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a brief little Palm Springs scene.
Yeah. So that's
now
that's where Allison learns that Billy has told his parents that
Yeah.
Allison is his girlfriend. And again, she's upset by that.
Mhm.
So then we're back in the apartment where Sandy is studying her lines, and Rhonda's music is too loud for her. So she asks Rhonda to leave the apartment. That's annoying for Rhonda. Sandy reveals that she has 8 lines and 3 screams. But I did notice that
Because there's no one there to say to her, there are no small parts, only small actors. And
Right.
there's no one there to tell her, you don't count your lines, sweetie.
Yeah. And did you notice that by this episode, Sandy's accent is completely gone?
Mhm.
And I
I
think
thought I was paying attention. I thought it was sort of fading. I thought she was sort of fading it out. There was a hint of it,
gradually.
but by the next episode, there's none.
Yeah. I felt like it was pretty not present in this one, which I think makes it easier. It just felt more comfortable.
I feel like it came back a little when she was with Jake, that scene later in the courtyard. It kind of comes when she does this, damsel in distress or this kind of Hollywood starlet thing. She kind of goes into it. But I didn't even think about it this time watching it.
Yeah.
I did notice, if we can just go on, talk about the apartment itself. It's very Rhonda. There's a lot of sort of like ethnic African fabric, and of course her wardrobe's kind of like that, all funky. And but I just overall noticed how everybody's apartment was very different and full and colorful and distinctive. Like the Michael and Jane, they had all this stuff in the kitchen, all foods and supplies, where these girls, there was nothing in the refrigerator really, except for the cake that they're going to eat. But I just noticed like each apartment was very distinctive, which
our set designer was wonderful. I'm going to remember her name. She decorated my first house.
Oh, that's
Really?
amazing.
Yeah, I was remembering that first house I had on North Knoll in Lake Hollywood. I bought it because it was up the street from the house Andrew shared with his 4 roommates. And that's how I found it. I was driving home from his house one day and I saw this house a quarter of a mile from the house where he lived. And then she did the decorating for me. She was wonderful. I'm going to look up her name as we speak.
Oh, that's great. Did it look like any of the apartments? Was it like
No, but it felt very me. So what we're talking, she's really good at seeing a personality and putting it together.
Yeah,
I loved that
that's
house. Yeah,
great.
she did a great job.
Very cool.
Well, that's the thing about the sets, because they would just have like a 1-bedroom apartment as like a blank slate. And then they would dress it for whatever scenes they were shooting that day. They would dress it for if it was Rhonda's apartment or if it was Matt's apartment, like whoever's apartment was a 1-bedroom, they would just redress. When Sydney had an apartment, it was not always, that space was not always Sydney's, the interior of it.
Right.
It was just according to what set decorating was there. So it was really cool that they could really completely change a space with
because if you look, if you're out in the courtyard and you look at the exterior of all the apartments, all of them are not full apartments. Like Joe's, when you're on the courtyard and you look up to where I moved into, where Rhonda and Sandy, I believe, live now, it's just a facade. That's just a door. There's nothing behind there. So they actually had to borrow another apartment that was fully there. So they did that, and they had to have a good memory of what goes now.
So which one were you? Because the first floor apartments were all working apartments and upstairs were all just facades. So when you were in your apartment, which downstairs apartment did you use? Because
it might have been Jake's, because it was right below Yeah,
Right.
yours was
That
full.
makes sense.
Yeah. It might have been Jake's. I've never remember going into what was, Michael and Jane's and using that as mine ever. It was a
That was
different
mine.
layout.
That
That
was
was
always mine.
yours.
Yeah.
Okay. Of course okay. We're not going to go too far ahead, but
Yeah.
yeah. It's
But
interesting.
It's how they, interchange these spaces that are just sets that it's all in the decor
Yes.
to make them individual. So yeah, so Sandy's she's trying to study and she's anxious and she's asking Rhonda to be quieter and actually maybe you could just leave, and she doesn't even want Rhonda to use her phone because she thinks she won't answer the call waiting soon enough, and she's really anxious about like making sure that she doesn't miss any calls or messages from her new job. Then we go to Palm Springs, where Billy's parents are excited to learn about Allison, and they are at the table. And Allison can see that Billy has told his parents all sorts of things about her that aren't exactly accurate, including like the nature of their relationship, how they met. Billy tells Allison then that his dad wants him to come to work at the furniture store.
Yeah, and he pitched her as a literary agent. There's this whole personality, and she's kind of fighting it, but almost saying things and then getting interrupted. There's a line when we go outside, and I'm so mad at him. And I say, I am really going to kill you for this. And I was like, you're not thinking kill you. It was so like, I am going to rip off your clothes
really
and kill you
like
for
you.
this.
But what I want to say is you're in trouble with me.
Yeah. I love the whole rom-com
there.
nature. I love the whole rom-com nature of it. This is such a great situation, like, do you have a minute? We can talk. And you walk in the other room and you're like, come out. Hi, Billy's parents. How are you? I just love that. This is so not the Melrose we came into, Laura. It's so great.
It's very cute. And
Especially between you two.
Billy is saying that because his dad wanted him to, inherit this furniture business, if he wasn't successful as a writer after 1 year, he really thought that at least by presenting Allison as his girlfriend, that would please his parents enough and maybe distract them from like sort of laying down the gauntlet and saying he needed to come be the furniture store manager.
Well, yeah, and his girlfriend, the literary agent, is
right.
If this
all
is his
sorts
path
of
in.
Yeah, twisting the truth a little bit. So that's Billy's agenda. And so at the dinner table, we learn that Billy's sister Stephanie, has the sauce thing down that his mom's really good at, but Billy's dad says, well, Billy has the salesman thing, according to him. And
and it's so sweet, right? Because his dad is coming from a really loving, sweet place. Like, we share this.
Yeah. And that's where he asks Allison of her professional opinion as a literary agent about
what do you
Billy's
think?
talent.
Yeah.
Puts her on the spot about that. And what is the time frame for his success, sort of thing?
Yeah, and a couple of months.
Allison's really put on the spot. She's like, well, it depends. Which, poor Billy doesn't feel like it's quite enough of a supportive answer, but Allison was kind of put on the spot.
Absolutely.
And I feel like outside of our business, when he says a couple of years, like that's almost unbelievable. In our business, that's not unbelievable. That would be amazing if it happened in a couple of years, where you could support yourself with this business.
Yeah.
But every other industry, I guess, moves faster because sometimes it takes forever to get your break.
It's really hard. When Jake was talking to Sandy about, there's a lot of rejection in that business. I just went, oh boy, is there, right?
Yeah.
Even a successful career, there's so much rejection you have to deal with. Like, say you get 1 out of 20 jobs, that's a great average. Yeah. And you've gotten rejected 19 times.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like if you look at anyone's resume and you know them from 1 or 2 or maybe 3 projects, you don't see the other 100 in there where they had a one-liner or a couple of, episodes and
or just didn't get the job
or didn't get it. And that's not even counting those. It takes a lot.
Yeah, the times when you get really, really close and then like you don't get it, your heart. So you've already planned what you're going to buy with the money you make for the job. Right?
You planned how your career is going to go from that point.
Yeah. You're 20 years in the future. Like, wait, what? But this is my first step.
No.
Yeah. She played that well too, the vulnerability and the heartbreak of that.
Yeah.
I felt too seen, dragged.
I'm NK, and this is Basket Case.
So I basically had what back in the day they would call a nervous breakdown.
I was crying and I was inconsolable.
It was just very big, sudden swaps of different meds.
What is wrong with me?
Oh, look at you giving me therapy, girl.
Finally, a show for the mentally ill girlies. On Basket Case, I talk to people about what happens when what we call mental health is shaped by the conditions of the world we live in. Because if you haven't noticed, we are experiencing some kind of up conditions that are pretty hard to live with. But if you struggle to cope, the society that created the conditions in the first place will tell you there's something wrong with you, and it will call you a basket case. Listen to Basket Case every Tuesday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We're back with Sandy. She's getting ready for a Hollywood party. She's going to, with the people that she's been hired, the producer or the casting person is going to take her out to this party. And she's borrowed a dress of Rhonda's without asking. So Rhonda's getting annoyed about, the way Sandy's all of a sudden, prioritizing her job over everything else. And there's a knock at the door and Sandy assumes it's her person picking her up for this party, but it turns out it's the Melrose Place gang surprising Sandy,
getting the part,
congratulating her for getting the
Which
job.
was so sweet.
Yeah.
So
So
sweet,
nice.
wasn't it?
with balloons and they
Yeah,
bring
Doug
him
comes in with a
and-
big hug. It's adorable.
Mhm.
And Sandy's so distracted about, wanting to make the right impression for this Hollywood producer that she tells them to hide the balloons. Sorry, I don't have time for cake and I got to go to this party. And it's sort of disappointing for everybody, especially for Rhonda. She's disappointed in Sandy.
I will say though, the way Amy played it, I really had compassion for her. Like she wasn't being dismissive or bratty. She was just saying, I can't have this right now. I'm trying to make a good impression and this makes me seem needy or whatever her story was. But I
Yeah.
felt for her. I thought that I know Rhonda's reacting to her getting a big head, but I didn't see that. I thought she played it so vulnerably that I was thinking that Rhonda was overreacting.
Yeah.
What did you guys think?
I agree. I felt like it was more in the story, in the writing, that she was getting a big head, and this is a crossroads that a lot of us go through when you start to do well in your career and other people aren't. I mean, as we were just saying, how hard it is, and we've all had roommates or something when we get a job and and people will say this to you, like, oh, you're getting a big head or something. I think it's very relatable in our industry. But I didn't see it happening. I felt like it was more of a story point that the writers
Yeah.
wrote.
Sandy's
Yeah,
just trying to get
played it
launched
so
and
vulnerable. Yeah.
yeah. And for her, it's a big deal. And she really just wants it to go well. And
Yeah.
so back at the Palm Springs drama unfolding, where Billy comes out to the patio to talk to his father, and he wants to tell him he doesn't really, know if he wants to do this furniture thing. He really wants to keep pursuing his writing thing. And his father says he just wants Billy to come around and stop indulging himself in the writing thing, and asks Billy to give the furniture store a shot.
Mm-hmm.
And then we cut to I think it's the basement where Billy's mom is showing Alison the place where she and Billy are going to share the pull-out couch and sleep for the night. Billy's already in the bed. He seems unfazed. He's shirtless.
By the way, shirtless scene number 2.
Shirtless.
And not just shirtless, in drawers.
Hanging
Like,
out, yeah.
Which Allison doesn't seem to notice. I'm like, are you not seeing what we're seeing, Allison?
and I saw that you brought your very thick robe. That's
huge
like
robe to Palm Springs. Apparently it was chilly in Palm Springs. I needed a huge heavy robe.
Did you notice that she says sleeping in the same bed and for the weekend and whatever with Billy is Allison's worst nightmare? She goes, this is my worst nightmare. I'm like, honey, if that is your worst nightmare,
you had a pretty charmed life.
Yeah.
If that's the worst thing that ever happened.
Wait,
to you.
so what's your best?
Again,
what?
no eyes. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, and the irony was done, captured by the director, the wide shot, and he's naked and good looking, and it's this little bed, this little privacy, and you're like in your robe and like, this is a nightmare. I mean, it was just
this is my worst nightmare.
It was
I
great.
pull it up high to my neck. I'm lying next to him, all stiff and all pulled up high to my neck.
Love it.
Yeah.
Poor
Very
Allison. Maybe she
rom-commy.
needs context. Maybe
Well-
there's a storyline that we don't know. She really can't see anything.
I think it was just a sign that Courtney, the actress, was acting her pants off because
because
she was-
off
yeah.
camera we were making out like crazy.
know.
So I was really
That's where you guys like
I love it.
totally.
I was like, seen it, so I could.
Yeah, I have to act really incensed by this. And Billy's bummed and tells Alison he's bummed that she didn't really come to his defense at dinner, and admits that he really doesn't want to break his dad's heart. But
Oh, which is so sweet.
yeah. So then Sandy's coming home from her party. She's coming through the courtyard. Is she drunk? Is she just acting drunk? She seems I wasn't sure. But she was seemed like she really wanted to exude, I had such a great time. It was amazing.
A big
I think
Hollywood
Sandy, the
party.
character,
was
was drunk.
confused.
I think she
You
was
think she
playing
was
drunk.
that was
I think she was playing drunk. Yeah.
he actually was coming home drunk.
Yeah. Didn't you think
Okay.
that's what she was playing?
Well,
It was confusing.
I
don't know.
definitely, when she turned to Jake, she definitely wanted him to know she had a great Hollywood night, like I'm on my way. That's what I felt like. She was like talking all that up.
Right. But my question was like, I know she wanted him to think that. And so you could see that she was like really pushing so that he would see that. It was great. I had a great time. She was almost throwing it in his face a little bit, like weaponizing it a little bit. But I guess I wondered because like she even exits the scene and she sort of like laughs at him and saying, well, he invites her to a midnight swim and she says, no, you had your chance. Ha ha ha. And she sort of like leaves, and she leaves the scene with kind of a laughing at him and whatever. And I was like, what is that her just wanting to show Jake that she had a great time? Or did she actually have a great time?
Well,
And
but
was
she didn't
drunk?
see
Like,
him when she came in. She didn't know he was there, so I don't think she was doing it for him.
right.
He came out after.
Right. But then like once that conversation started, that's what I started going, are you actually drunk? Or are you like just wanting him to see a certain thing, like wanting to present a certain way? Anyway, it was a little confusing.
Huh.
But maybe that was just
I do think that it's on that point throughout this whole script. I was waiting for some more definition with her experience with the Hollywood group, like I know that there was mixed and probably most of it wasn't good, but you tell yourself, oh, it was a great night, and maybe
Right.
you felt really out of it anyway. So I think you're always gonna it wasn't really clear. We actually never saw anyone else. We never saw a guy, a producer, or anyone else. So
Yeah.
who knows what it was like.
Yeah.
But
But then we're back with Alison and Billy, and Alison is watching Billy as he is preparing to go to the furniture store, and Billy still feels like he's owing it to his dad, and says, what would you do if it was your dad? And Alison's response is sort of interesting here. She says, well,
Very.
I guess we've had different experiences. Very cryptic
Yeah, and I didn't
response.
realize, because I know later we found out Allison had a very complicated relationship with her dad. I didn't realize that we knew this at this point. I was like, oh, that's early.
Well,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, you must not have known these details yet as an actor, even like what that story was going to be become.
right, no.
Yeah, I wonder if they
But-
told me. I wonder if I did know, because that was very loaded the way I played
would
that.
say-
It was definitely loaded. Yeah.
I would guess, I don't know, Court, but I would guess not, because I think writers, they will draw out an outline for the whole season, but I don't think we find out about your father and what really went down this even season. It's way down in the future. So, they're just trying to like hint at things were different. And as writers, my guess is we'll flesh it in later, what really happened specifically.
It's good writing, though, to drop that pebble there.
Yeah.
Right?
And you
Good.
get a sense of like her inner life and how she's, sort of witnessing what Billy's choices are, and how she can't sort of understand his choices based on her own experience, that it's just been very, very different for her.
Yeah, and why she feels alone in it. Like why when she couldn't
Yeah.
make the rent, she didn't call her parents. Like she feels alone in the world for
Yeah.
some reason that we'll find
So
out
we're
later.
learning about both of them through this
Mhm.
storyline. And then we're at the furniture store where Billy is trying to sell a couple on a sofa, and he's suggesting the floral chintz, and he's got a giant blazer on with huge shoulders, and he marches off to go pull down this fabric, and and his dad is watching him and he thinks Billy's doing great. And Billy just feels uncomfortable selling the couple on any of it. He's like,
but he's saying chintz and pine. Do you remember chintz
Yeah,
and pine?
absolutely.
I had so much of that. Do you remember on Venice Boulevard, there were all those stores that sold this pine furniture? I had so much of it. That was that time.
Yep. Shabby chic and all that.
Light pine. Yeah.
I actually
French. It was French country and Irish country.
Yes.
I had that too.
The fabric store that they were shooting in, did it look like an actual fabric store to you guys, or a set?
A furniture store.
Like that furniture store. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Because it had all the walls of fabric. Did you think it was like, I wonder where that was. At first I was thinking Calico Corners. Do you remember that place?
No.
Well, that's
Floral
fabric,
chintz, maybe.
right? I think it was
that's
a
just
furniture
fabric,
store.
right?
Yeah.
So it was maybe just like a sofa you love or something.
You would know the Calico.
But bigger,
have you been
much
sewing
bigger.
for all these years, Laura?
I remember the names of fabric stores for sure.
Great.
I know them all. So then he's uncomfortable. Billy's uncomfortable with it, and he's talking to his dad, and his dad is defending it. And here's where he said Billy's father says to him, "There's nothing wrong with being a furniture salesman that isn't wrong with being anyone else." And I had to rewind that one again and go, wait, play that back. What did he just say?
Yeah.
Let me repeat it for you.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being a furniture salesman that isn't wrong with being anyone else.
Yeah. And he just says it twice, I think.
He does.
Words to live by.
It was tough. I mean,
Okay, Dad.
I think just as an actor, even like memorizing that line would be
Yeah.
hard. But yeah, it was sort of a head tilting.
He
line.
probably came in and said, "Can I reword this?" And we're like, "Oh no, you can't.
No.
That's
Yeah.
you can't.
No.
You can't.
We don't
at
do that
all."
here. No, say it just the way it's written.
You
So
know,
he
a
did.
lot of things make sense on paper that never make sense coming out of somebody's mouth. That's a big
Yeah.
kind of like a big thing about this industry that, we all know, because we have to sell something that looked great on paper. And sometimes it just doesn't work coming out of somebody's mouth. It just doesn't.
One time I had an audition and I didn't get the job, partly because I said this line and started laughing. And it was, "I'm not cannon fodder in your fight with your father."
Oh,
And I just said, and I
You
just
still
started
remember.
laughing. I was like, "Cannon fodder, you fight with your father." And there was a writer director and he was like, "And you're done here."
and
Imagine how many people he fired that day.
You think he would hear it and go, "Yes, I need to change that."
Yeah.
But I think he blamed me. It's like, that's not on me.
No.
dude.
Yeah, no, it's very different in writing and the actually saying it
Yeah.
out loud.
It can be. Yes.
Yep, can be. So then Jane and Michael, we find them in their apartment where Michael is attempting to cook for Jane, and he's got one foot in the air and he's standing at the stove, doesn't want any help from Jane. He wants to do it all. Don't you hurt yourself. Don't you strain yourself. And then he ends up dropping the pan, lighting himself on fire. And
Yes.
Jane is like, wow, she pulls the sink hose, she douses him, he's sopping wet, and he goes full Jerry Lewis and crumples on the floor.
Yeah.
That
And that was
like
quite a
lot.
stunt.
And weren't you
because it was-
thinking, throw it in the sink? Throw it in the sink. Why
Yeah.
is he holding
No.
it up and she's spraying?
She sprays him, the whole kitchen, everything. He
Yeah.
goes like
The camera? Did you notice the
switches and
camera?
does a little
Oh, no,
thing,
I
and
didn't.
Jerry
Oh,
Lewis,
the
and
water
is
comes right
floor.
on the camera, the POV, and
Yeah.
they cut right away from it.
Exactly.
And they cut back to the pyrotechnics. I'm like, this was a whole stunt afternoon. You could tell it took a
Yeah.
Huge
afternoon.
stunt.
A lot
fire.
happened to just say, here's what we want to say is that Michael is trying to do something nice for Jane and
Yes.
nearly lights himself and the whole place on fire.
And
And
he's trying
also-
to make her the super healthy veggie dish. And she says she just
Yeah.
wants a quarter pounder.
Yeah.
Yes. Surprised he didn't run after her. No, you can't put that in your body. We're growing a child.
So,
yeah.
but luckily they put the fire out and all's well that ends well.
And she
Billy
does
comes-
go to get her quarter pounder, which was
Yeah.
great. Good for her.
Yep.
But you're noticing script wise, Michael's trying too hard. Everything. He's just, he twists his ankle, moving the furniture. He's over eager with the cooking. He's just trying so hard.
He's
That's
done
like
a
theme
total
throughout.
180 from 2 episodes ago where he's like,
Yeah, like,
I
doesn't even-
don't want a kid. I'm not ready for a kid. No. And
Yeah.
then now
And
he's
doesn't even
bending
want to
over back.
see her and like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then Billy is coming home and he actually has to repeat the line to Allison, there's nothing wrong with being a furniture salesman that isn't wrong with being
anybody
else.
else.
I think Allison is saying, huh? But yeah, so he's just repeating that to himself and hoping to talk himself into that.
Yeah.
And the reference that Allison says, congratulations, Billy, you've just won $1 million because Ed McMahon says so.
Yes.
The
Is
sweepstakes,
that still going on?
the sweepstakes things that would come in the mail. Remember
Does
that?
that
I don't
still
know, but I
happen, though?
remember when my mom was so convinced that she had actually won that, which
Oh
is
my
so not
God.
like her, but it's like, I really feel good that we she brought a TV to our vacation house, which didn't have a TV because this is the year. Anyway, sadly did not win.
Yeah.
But
No,
didn't you kind of, every time you open it, you thought, why not me?
it's an exciting possibility, sure.
Yeah. I mean, big checks.
Sweepstakes.
Remember those ads?
Sure.
Yeah.
And they keep come knocking on the door
Yes.
with this giant check. So then we're back with Rhonda and Sandy, and they are fighting. And Sandy says, fine, I'll just move out. I'm, whatever. This isn't working anyway. And Rhonda's upset. She's like, I just feel like everybody's, fed up with you, Sandy. You're blowing off your friends and you're just getting a big head. And this is where it all comes to they're fighting about it. And Sandy says, well, I just think everyone's jealous and you're not supportive because I'm making my dreams happen. And just because you don't have anything going on, And so,
didn't you cringe when she said talking about it? I was like, oh, that's so sixth grade.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about how horrible you are. It's like, oh,
yeah.
And
it was cringy on both of their
poor
insults
babies.
were cringy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that before that blow up, though, them rehearsing the lines and the way that Rhonda's running the lines.
So disinterested. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Sandy's like, it doesn't say that. She goes, oh, I guess I got carried away. Like,
Yeah. Her own little editorial in there.
Rolling her eyes.
Yeah. I mean, it's really the struggle of the actor.
Yeah. In the name of being her scene partner.
You have to make all this stuff real in your mind, and you're surrounded by people who don't get it and who do really bad line readings. But she's trying to help. Rhonda's trying to be supportive.
Except she is sort of trying to
She's
slip
not
in her.
really. Is she really though? She's not
She's
really.
helping to run her lines, but it's also an opportunity to tell her what she really thinks. Really.
Yeah.
And that sure enough ends in a fight that leaves Sandy saying, fine, I'm moving out. I've wanted to live alone anyway. So they end on that. And then we cut to the set where Sandy is filming and she is screaming her way through.
We're in the forest.
This movie set forest.
Yeah. I thought it was cool.
She's doing that big scream again. And the female director asks for another take. And she pulls the male actor aside.
The monster guy.
Who's the bad guy. And says, on this one, I want you to rip Sandy's blouse open, one button at a time. And Sandy overhears this direction. And this clearly was not direction that was in the script. And Sandy's face totally falls. But to her credit, she asked the director, why? This wasn't in the script. And why do we have to do it that way? Why is that a thing? And the director says, well, if you don't want to do it, I'll just recast it because basically there's a million other blondes who would be happy to do it. So what's it going to be? You going to do it this way or?
Yeah. And this scene brought me right back. One of my first movies, I was 17 years old and I was in Tahoe, and the storyline was I was 17 and I was playing against this guy who was in his late 30s. The script, we did sleep together in the script, and I wore one of his button-down shirts afterwards. And I got to set that day. I'm in Tahoe, and I got to set that day, and there's this really sexy negligee in my room. Again, I'm 17. And I went to the director and I said, this isn't what was written. And he said, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I had a no nudity clause, which we had, right? You have no nudity clauses in your contract now, which are probably harder to get now that everybody's naked and everything. And he goes, I said, but the way it was cut, I was very busty then. And I said, the way it's cut, something will show. And I also had this mindset of, I'm 17 with an almost 4-year-old man. I knew it was kind of off, but the shirt made it feel all right. And this I remembered this when all the Weinstein stuff was happening and women were talking about how their agent sent them to this hotel room. And I called my agent. My agent flew or drove up to Lake Tahoe to support me. And they said, don't do it. If you're not comfortable, don't do it. And like this scene, the producer came into my room and said, the whole crew is talking about what a baby you're being. They all think you're being such a baby. And I
am.
well, yeah, but I had enough of somehow, and I think it's because I was so supported. Elisa Adler, God bless, I'm still with that agency today. They so had my back. They didn't say just do it. They said, hold on. They came to support me. And I feel reading this, I feel so grateful that I had that kind of support because the pressure they put on me, I was a young woman. And I'm so grateful. And they were furious. And I ended up wearing his button-down shirt. And I was
scripted.
so grateful because they just trapped me. I walked into my room and there was this really sexy lingerie.
So Courtney, how did they wait while they drive up to Tahoe? Or did it happen? Did you put a pause on it and it happened the next day?
Like, that's what I'm thinking. Like, it must have, first of all, they said, don't do anything you're not comfortable with. My agent, right? 100% on my side. And they either backed down, but I remember they were really annoyed with me and the crew. But I will say this, they lied about the crew. Every single member of the crew came up to me and said, good for you. Good for you. They were so, crews are amazing, as you guys know, right? Crews are amazing.
Yeah.
And they really had my back, but I knew I just got the connection, right? Why I was so annoyed when Rhonda said, everybody's annoyed with you, because that's what happened to me on that set.
Yeah.
The crew thinks you're being a baby.
Yeah.
And it wasn't true. And thank God they had my back. So, you know, good support is so hugely important because they tried to pressure me into doing it. And here's part of it too. They said there won't be nudity, but what I was wearing was like, something's going to fall out. And I thought in my mind, and you're going to film, whether you use it here or not, I don't want you to have it.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful I had that ability to stand up for myself at that age. I'm amazed, actually. I had that ability at that age.
Yeah, I had an experience like that too. I had wasn't in the script, and we were out of the country, and the director came into my trailer and tried to convince me to shoot it nude, and I was like, no. And I had a big agency, but I felt very trapped because this was way back when there were no cell phones. You're in a trailer in another country, and there's this big producer, director, and you think everyone's, you know, in hindsight, I look back and I see, oh, you know, he was told to come in and And once they have you away from the protection of your big agents. So I love that, you know, your agents protected you. I ended up not doing it, and I somehow reached somebody. But again, you're so young and you feel that pressure from someone who you're supposed to trust, you know, and here we are post Me Too. And we're seeing this way back then. And you're talking about a time that happened even before that. And it happened before this Melrose Place scene. And I experienced it back in the 80s. And what I didn't like about, what I thought was so odd about this script is, why did they make the director a woman and Asian?
Well, they consciously did. Because
I felt like it was, you know, like I didn't
like it.
It seemed like saying, this is not just a male thing. This is a Hollywood thing. But like saying this was a female director asking this of this girl.
That was BS. Yeah. Because I've never been pressured by a female director, and it's certainly never been a woman of color. I mean, that's just not who does it.
Well, no, but there was something recently on that show, The Affair. And that extraordinary actress who starred on that, she had problems with the female producer who she said was writing gratuitous sex scenes. And there were a ton of gratuitous, like she'd be having a conversational scene. She's talking. We don't need to see her breasts. So it does happen. I think they were
rarely.
I agree with Laura that they were trying to say, it's not about this man being creepy. It's about her being pressured by
Hollywood and the demands of Hollywood.
By Hollywood. I think it was a really conscious choice to make her be a woman. But I agree with you. It's more rare, right? I think it's more rare. I think for the most part, female directors are much more conscious of being respectful of women.
Yeah, I feel like it's very rare. I felt like it was a cheap shot. I didn't
Oh,
like it
interesting.
because here's a woman, an Asian actress who, how many offers does she get anyway?
Yeah.
And then she plays like the bad guy director who tries to talk a young actress into taking off her top. So I just thought it was,
Sneaky.
I just didn't like it. And this
What
writer
was
is a woman, you know, Darren co-wrote it maybe, or oversaw it, but it was a woman, Tony Graff, who does Outlander. She's done a ton of stuff, but I noticed that, I don't know. I just didn't know where that direction came from or that casting, but
Interesting.
yeah, it is interesting.
so, and you know, Sandy at the time didn't have any support. She had to make the decision in the moment. Like,
Right.
are you here? Are you in or are you out? Is basically what the director asks her, and she has
Mhm.
to make a choice. And so we see her begin the scene, and then she's obviously doing it with a lot of trepidation, and she's, you know, not happy, but she goes through with it. She feels really pressured. She didn't want to lose the job.
Well, we don't know if she cut through with it because they cut the scene.
Right. Well,
Before.
you see the knife
Right.
from
Then the scene
actor like
cuts.
opening up the thing, and the director encouraging her to go ahead and let the tears, go ahead and cry. Like
And
they
then it
really want to
cuts.
see her as
Yeah.
a victim. Yeah.
Well, based on
And
her
that's-
reaction after, though, you assumed she went through with it because she's
Yeah.
Well,
upset.
no, we haven't gotten there yet, but she didn't
Oh.
go through with it. We know that. She didn't
Look
go
at
through
me
with
not
it.
keeping up. Okay.
But she tells Jake, so she didn't go through with it. But at any rate, you think
Right.
she's did at this
But
point.
she, you know, she was willing to do the next take. And because we do see her do that, she was willing to go, okay, I'm going to try. And so she goes to do the next take, and she's going through the woods. She does the scream, and then the guy comes and does cut the top
And then
open. We don't
buttons
really see what
pop.
happens after that. Yeah,
We
that's
don't
it.
see if she went like this
Exactly.
or whatever.
Exactly. So, but then the next morning she's upset. She's packing her things to move out. And Rhonda says to her, you know, she's sort of apologizing. She didn't mean that Sandy didn't, you know, she didn't need to leave right away. And Sandy says, that's okay. I've got this great guest house waiting for me. And, you know, somebody from this movie, and she's sort of telling lies about how great her opportunities are. And she's going to move into the guest house. Things seem to be moving really fast. I guess it went okay on the set. Miranda and Sandy lies, says it was great. And yeah, see ya.
Mm-hmm.
So she's lying to herself, lying to Rhonda.
She's
And then-
bummed, man. She's had her Hollywood moment. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a real down. This happens to so many actresses
Reality.
and
Yeah.
in different ways to actors too.
So then
Yeah,
back
a
at the-
lot of people quit after something like this. They go, I'm not
Exactly.
doing this again. Yeah,
Exactly.
so true.
So yeah, so back at the furniture store, there is a lady bouncing on a couch, antagonizing Billy for the pricing at the store. And Billy is annoyed. He finally just sort of loses his patience with the lady and offends her a little bit. And his dad has witnessed this, and he has to come over and try to fix it and apologize to the lady. And says
And
to
the
Billy,
lady is Liz Sheridan, who played the child's mom, which was
Oh, yeah.
so much fun to see her.
so crazy, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And that scene just opens up. She's bouncing.
Yeah. Funny in
It's
this too.
like-
Funny in everything. Yeah.
It's awesome. And Billy's dad says, how are you ever going to the discipline to last 1 week at this job? And Billy apologizes and said that working here was just a bad idea. And he leaves. Billy leaves. So then Jake catches Sandy as she's leaving the building in the courtyard. She's got all her stuff, and he misinterprets her leaving as like sort of leaving everyone in the dust. He's like, you're just leaving everyone in the dust. And he's angry with her. And Sandy's like, no, that's you. You don't understand. Here's what happened. And she ends up telling him the whole story. And she's very emotional telling it. She's honest with him instead of the lies that she was telling to Rhonda. She's actually telling Jake what did happen. And she said she's feeling exploited. She feels exploited every day. And she doesn't really know who she is and how to just be herself. But she thinks
She said,
maybe
I couldn't go through with it. That's where she says, I couldn't go through with it. And he goes, well, what's wrong with that? That's great. And she's like, I know, but that's when she says, I exploit myself every day and I don't know who I am. And maybe that's
Yeah.
why I'm an actor. I just want to start over. It's funny because the business and the acting itself gets into your head and messes with you. Who am I? You know, who am I supposed to be? Who do they want me to be?
Yeah.
So she's like, I just got to leave and start over fresh.
And can I do this here? Like, is this even possible to be myself and to be, you know, true to myself? And is this all it's ever going to be? But she says, she thinks maybe she needs new friends and a new life. And that's why she's leaving. And so Jake is angry and says, if you think you can just walk out of here and no one will miss you, then you're wrong. So So she leaves, and then we're back at D&D. Billy's showing up at D&D and telling Alice, quit the furniture store. And he's just watched a movie in the middle of the daytime. Do you remember what movie he watched?
Did he say what movie?
The Beautiful and the Damned. Is that what he said?
Okay.
No. He said, this is because that was my favorite line. He said, who's in movie theaters during the day? The Beautiful and the Damned.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought, all right. Yeah. I misinterpreted.
The great movie title, though.
It is.
Young nubile women. And
why is that not
Yes.
Billy's next movie?
Yes.
I used to go to matinees all the time.
I love matinees.
I never saw I noticed. Maybe I was one of those young nubile ones.
But like coming out of the movie theater in the day, like when it's still light outside, is sort of disorienting. It's been dark inside, and you come out and you're like, what have I done?
But especially in LA, because there are
daytime.
so many creative people who don't work all the time.
Yes.
So a lot of people are out during the day.
Yeah.
Right.
And there are a lot of
between
theaters
jobs.
here. I used to go to like the art houses, the little indies.
Yes.
And I would see like double features sometime because you don't, and of course you'd check your phone in between. Did I get a message yet?
Just in case. Check your answering machine.
Check my answering machine. Yeah.
And Allison says, I knew that wasn't right for you. And Billy's like, well, why didn't you tell me that in the first place? And she's like, well, I don't think I did. But anyway.
She says, and I thought this was really good boundary. She basically said, it's not for me to tell you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was like, were you seeking out codependent anonymous meetings? Like, that's a really good message, which is, it's your life. You get to live your life.
And he sort of knew it too. Like he just wasn't being honest with himself about it.
But he had to learn it himself, right? And even if she'd said it would have been a fight. Like, we have to learn our own lessons. That is a truism.
Daphne Caruana Galizia was a Maltese investigative journalist who on October 16, 2017, was murdered.
There are crooks everywhere you look now. The situation is desperate.
My name is Manuel Delia. I am one of the hosts of Crooks Everywhere, a podcast that unearths the plot to murder a one-woman WikiLeaks. Daphne exposed the culture of crime and corruption that were turning her beloved country into a mafia state. And she paid the ultimate price. Listen to Crooks Everywhere on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, this is Matt Rogers.
And Bowen Yang, we've got some exciting news for you.
We're always bringing you the best guests, right?
Well, this week we're taking it to the next level.
The one, the only, Catherine Hahn is joining us on Las Culturistas.
That's right, the queen of comedy herself.
Get ready for a conversation that's as hilarious as it is insightful.
Tune in for all the laughs, the stories, and of course, the culture.
I feel some Sandra Bernhard in you.
Oh my God, I would love it. I have to watch Lost.
Oh, you have to.
No, I know, I'm so behind.
Catherine Hahn can sing.
Oh, I'm really good at karaoke.
And
what's your song?
On camera, what's your song?
Oh, I love a ballad. I felt Bjork's music and I just was like, who is this person? I gotta hawk this slalom, Luigi.
Not hawk the slalom. I absolutely love it. It was somehow Shakespearean when you said it. It was somehow gorgeous.
Yee, must suck you, Harlem.
Listen to Las Culturistas on Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, I'm Gianna Prudenti.
And I'm Janae Jackson-Gadsden. We're the hosts of Let's Talk Offline, a new podcast from LinkedIn News and iHeart Podcasts.
When you're just starting out in your career, you have a lot of questions, like how do I speak up when I'm feeling overwhelmed?
Or, can I negotiate a higher salary if this is my first real job? Girl, yes.
Each week, we answer your unfiltered work questions.
Think of us as your work besties you can turn to for advice.
And if we don't know the answer, we bring in experts who do, like resume specialist Morgan Sanner.
The only difference between the person who doesn't get the job and the person who gets the job is usually who applies.
Yeah, I think a lot about that quote. What is it? Like you miss 100% of the shots you never take?
Yeah, rejection is scary, but it's better than you rejecting yourself.
Together, we'll share what it really takes to thrive in the early years of your career.
Without sacrificing your sanity or sleep.
Listen to Let's Talk Offline on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I've been thinking about you. I want you back in my life. It's too late for that. I have a proposal for you. Come up here and document my project. All you need to do is record everything like you always do. One session, 24 hours.
BPM 110, 120. She's terrified.
Should we wake her up?
Absolutely not.
What was that?
You didn't figure it out?
I think I need to hear you say it.
That was live audio of a woman's nightmare.
This machine is approved and everything? You're allowed to be doing this?
We passed the review board a year ago. We're not hurting people.
There's nothing dangerous about what you're doing.
They're just dreams.
Dream Sequence is a new horror thriller from Blumhouse Television, iHeartRadio, and Realm. Listen to Dream Sequence on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I felt too seen. Dragged.
I'm NK, and this is Basket Case.
So I basically had what back in the day they would call a nervous breakdown.
I was crying and I was inconsolable.
It was just very big, sudden swaps of different meds.
What is wrong with me?
Oh, look at you giving me therapy, girl.
Finally, a show for the mentally ill girlies. On Basket Case, I talk to people about what happens when what we call mental health is shaped by the conditions of the world we live in. Because if you haven't noticed, we are experiencing some kind of up conditions that are pretty hard to live with. But if you struggle to cope, the society that created the conditions in the first place will tell you there's something wrong with you, and it will call you a basket case. Listen to Basket Case every Tuesday on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
As I've said before, I'm trying to see all the writing aspects of this. And so that scene to me was like the first time he says, why didn't you say, and you say, what am I, the all wise person? Like, so she is, but she supports him and like, you don't have to do it. And then we're going to see, this starts the tie-ups, the neatly tied bows where someone bestows some wisdom on the other character in the scene.
Yep.
And it's coming up with Sandy and Rhonda.
Yep. So that one's pretty well wrapped up. And then Jane is back at the apartment, and now she is cooking for Michael, who's on the couch recovering. His foot is up, and he's telling Jane he's not really very hungry. Don't make very much food. I'm not really hungry. And he reveals that he's having some anxiety over having this baby. What if he doesn't know what to say to him? What if he doesn't know who he is? And Jane is awfully sweet and saying, you're going to be great. You're going to be a great dad.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're sort of coming to terms with their little struggles.
And then he says to her, it's such a sweet moment. He says, how are you so wise? And she says, I have to be. I'm going to be someone's mom.
Mm-hmm.
And the way she delivered it, I just went, oh, it was so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
She's so good at those moments. I was just like, oh, that was beautifully delivered. So sweet.
And again, there's that word, the wise thing. I love that. I love that. Now that I'm thinking about it, like these are, as you've always said, Court, like young people trying to make it, give it a go. Like, what do they know? It's mostly you fall into potholes and you're freaking out. But there is wisdom in them. We saw it with the Billy and the Alison just now. And now we see it with Jane and Michael, and they don't know what's coming, but there is that wisdom, which I think that's the whole theme of the show so far. Before it changes.
Yeah. What lessons can we learn from this? And there's always a good lesson.
Yeah. There's always support, and the wisdom comes from the supporting each other and being there for each other.
Speaking of which, Sandy comes back to the apartment and asks Rhonda if she will take her back. They both apologize for their fight, and they decide to celebrate by eating their celebration cake that had come the night that they were trying to congratulate Sandy. Sandy apologizes again, saying, I am an unbalanced personality, aren't I?
Mm-hmm.
But again,
Rhonda
she didn't seem super imbalanced. She handled it pretty well, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Rhonda says, yeah, but we balance each other out.
But they're back to being roommates and friends again.
Yeah.
And then Billy needs to resolve his stuff with his dad. He goes back to his dad's office late at night, and the store is closed. And his father says, I'm glad you're back, Bill. Didn't think you were that kind of a quitter. And But Billy says that he didn't come back to ask for the job back, and he tells him that he wants to start doing things his own way, and that even though he knows his dad wanted him to follow in his footsteps, it doesn't seem like the right thing for himself. So, his dad reveals, well, I guess I expected you to get the same thrill out of the store that I got. It was handed down to me from my father, but he accepts the fact that maybe it's just not for Billy. So they hug it out, and he seems to be okay with Billy's decision, and they're back to being okay with each other.
Yeah, very sweet. Very sweet scene.
Very sweet. And I think this is a real universal theme, don't you?
Yeah.
About parents really letting their child be who they are. I hear stories of a person trying to live up to, at least for a while, till they get older maybe, but trying to live up to their parents' expectations, or their parents just want them to be safe. All he wants is them to be safe and secure, and it's so scary to be a writer, in Hollywood. So, but it seems like a real universal theme to me, standing up to your parents saying, I'm me. I love you. Isn't that enough?
Yeah. And
it works so well for him, right? His father, Billy's father's father, gave it to him, and he thought, well, this is great. I have this thing to give you. I remember my dad had a market research and consulting company for the computer industry. And before he sold it, he said, and I was a working actor, like I was in my 30s, and he said, do you want the company? And he said, I know the answer is probably no, but he had built this thing, and he would have loved to give it to me or my sister, but neither of us wanted it. And he ended up selling it quite well. But I thought, oh, what a sweet moment. Like, what if I was an actor, but I dreamed of working in the market research community, right? Maybe that was my secret dream.
Could have been. Yeah, you could have.
And reminds me, I realized I have my own story. My dad was a professor, and he said, I dropped out of UCLA to do my first, that horror film I told you about, where I was going to go and star in it. I was a junior, and I had, and my father said to me years later, I was working with Lucille Ball, Mel Brooks, like on my way, getting paid. I think maybe bought my first house. And he said, don't you want to go back and get your degree? Don't you want to go finish your degree and get, just so you're a graduate of college? And I tried twice just to please him, thinking what am I going to do with these extra, what am I going to do with that degree? But he just wanted me to be safe. Yeah. And I never got it. And then one of the directors I was working with the Lucille Ball movie was the dean of the School of Arts at UCLA for a year. Can't you ask him for an honorary degree? Oh, and I was like, I'll get back to you. Let me get my lines down, and working with the greatest comedian of all. And, I never asked George for an honorary degree. And so I'm still a dropout, but, it's that parent thing wanting. Laura, do you have a story like that from your parents?
Well, I do think as parents, we all want something for our children, and it's not always what they want for themselves. Or I think even when I was deciding to be an actor, I think it was my mom's probably worst nightmare. What? Just such an unstable and unknown thing to do, no guarantees at all. And I think that was sort of horrifying, because I had left Iowa and moved out to California, and sort of decided to also drop out of college and pursue what I was pursuing. And it was just not having something stable to rely on, or feel is more reliable, I think is really scary for a parent. But and I feel like we're all the success stories, we're lucky, we're it's a very difficult business, and I think everybody has quite a bit of luck to have it all work out. I feel really lucky. I could have gone a million ways, and I
lucky, but also I was told early on from a manager I had, he said, you have to have tenacity, period. Yeah. And I had a friend of mine who said to me, he was a producer, and he said, there are no failures, just quitters. So whenever I had downtimes, or I wasn't working and I was worrying about stuff, it was I just had these things in my mind, I just can't quit, period. I have to be tenacious. I have to have that persistence, just keep on going. And it's true. It's true. Always, I think, so.
Well, and we talked about at the beginning, like the amount of rejection in this business, like you have to want to do it so badly that you can't be talked out of it, and I think that's something we always try to tell people who say, oh, I think I might want to be an actor. And like, and Doug and I always tell people, like, or our kids or whatever, like, you have to want to do it so badly that I'm going to talk you out of it and tell you all the reasons you shouldn't, and you should still want to do it. And then that's the indication that, like, you have the fortitude and the desire and the passion to do it, because it's a brutally
to do it anyway.
Yeah. It's just hard. A lot of rejection more than anything. And you have to want to be able to fight through that and want to do it.
And I feel like you have to want to do it because you love the doing of it. Like I always tell, I've always told younger people, like, you have to want to do it, whether it's on a local community stage or teaching it, or it's summer stock, and then if the break comes and you get to do it on Broadway or in front of a camera, awesome. But if you got to love to make these movies, and make your own little movies, especially now with phones, you can, but you have to love the doing of it, because we don't know what the result's going to be.
Yeah. And I think that is the story that Billy and his dad are having. His dad is like, yes, just this great, reliable thing, this furniture store. And so actually that our last scene, Alison is in the courtyard, she's grilling, and Billy comes home and says, I told my dad and it went really well. And thank you for the encouragement. And I'm telling him the truth. This is my truth. Yes, a writing career is going to be hard, but I didn't want the furniture business. And so that was great. And he told his parents the truth about that. But then he reveals to Alison, but actually,
she asks him, did you tell him about the truth about us?
Did you clear up the bit about, like, I'm not your girlfriend? He's like, oh yeah, no, about that. No, I didn't tell them that. We can tell them that the next time we take a trip with them, which is, by the way, to Lake Powell for this family trip. And we'll tell them then. So
on a houseboat, we're all going to be on a houseboat. And she's like, what?
So there's a very cute episode out where it's a very cute, like you said, rom-com ending where they go bickering about, give me the phone. I'm going to call him and tell him myself. And
she leaves, she goes in, and he's and she's like, what's the phone number? I'm telling them now. And he's like, no. And he follows her, and you hear it. I love it. The camera pulls out.
That was really cute.
And you just hear them.
Super cute rom-com
What's the
ending.
number? What's very funny. Yeah. Give me the phone. Give me the number. Give me the phone. Give me the number. And those two are going to get together any day.
Well, we can only hope. And so that's that. That's episode number 7. That's a wrap on another Still the Place recap. We're halfway to Daphne. We're turning the corner.
More than a third of the way to Laura.
And on the way to it becoming a totally different show.
We're only a few episodes away from Sweeps, which is where, like, the first order of 13 episodes, right? If we're on 7 now, around 12 and 13, they were hitting those episodes around Sweeps week and trying to get, like, really good ratings for this section of time, and also to find out if they were going to get picked up for their back 9 order.
Yeah. And what I see, like, we talked about this episode gelling in the last one, like, it's kind of so nice that we were under the radar for so long. We were getting to know each other, because then we really were friends when it took off. That's really lucky, right? If it had taken off right away, we might have fractured.
But at this point, you must not have been so sure, because the ratings weren't great, and you're approaching that.
The ratings weren't great. Getting towards
the end of 13. You don't know if you have any more episodes after that. It might just end after 13, unless they will pick you up. So tune in next week on Still the Place to find out. All right, see you next week.
Daphne Caruana Galizia was a Maltese investigative journalist who on October 16, 2017, was assassinated.
Crooks everywhere unearths the plot to murder a one-woman WikiLeaks. She exposed the culture of crime and corruption that were turning her beloved country into a mafia state.
Listen to Crooks Everywhere on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, this is Matt Rogers.
And Bowen Yang. We've got some exciting news for you.
You know we're always bringing you the best guests, right?
Well, this week we're taking it to the next level.
The one, the only, Catherine Hahn is joining us on Las Culturistas.
That's right, the queen of comedy herself.
Get ready for a conversation that's as hilarious as it is insightful.
Tune in for all the laughs, the stories, and of course, the culture.
Don't miss Catherine Hahn on Las Culturistas. Listen to Las Culturistas on Will Ferrell's Big Money Players Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, I'm Gianna Prudenti.
And I'm Jamae Jackson Gadsden. We're the hosts of Let's Talk Offline from LinkedIn News and iHeart Podcasts.
There's a lot to figure out when you're just starting your career. That's where we come in.
Think of us as your work besties you can turn to for advice.
And if we don't know the answer, we bring in people who do, like negotiation expert Maury Taheri-Poor.
If you start thinking about negotiations as just a conversation, then I think it sort of eases us a little bit.
Listen to Let's Talk Offline on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Señora Sex Ed is not your mommy's sex talk. This show is La Plática like you've never heard it before. We're breaking the stigma and silence around sex and sexuality in Latinx communities.
This podcast is an intergenerational conversation between Latinas from Gen X to Gen Z.
We're your hosts, Diosa and Mala. You might recognize us from our first show, Locatora Radio. Listen to Señora Sex Ed on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
How do you feel about biscuits? Hi, I'm Akilah Hughes, and I'm so excited about my new podcast, Rebel Spirit, where I head back to my hometown in Kentucky and try to convince my high school to change their racist mascot, the Rebels, into something everyone in the South loves, the biscuits.
I was a lady rebel. Like, what does that even mean?
It's right here in black and white in print. So
it's bigger than a flag or mascot.
Listen to Rebel Spirit on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.